Okay, so today I wanted to go a little bit more in detail into the Eminence of Shadow, or Eminence in Shadow. I've been watching a bit more of it. I didn't actually think I was going to keep watching it, but it's actually not too bad. I kind of had one idea for what I thought the story was going to be, and it managed to kind of surprise me. So yeah, kind of what I generally had in mind was that it was going to follow the traditional anime harem route, where basically the plot line equals the basically the romance in a sense, or even sometimes not even the romance, just the people in it, or also known as the women or the men, just depending on whether it's a harem or reverse harem. So usually the way it works is the plot equals the anime ladies, we'll call them, basically. And that's kind of where it is. And basically all the story more or less does is find reasons for them to be around each other. And that's kind of what, at least initially, it seemed like it was headed that way for an episode or two. But luckily, it seems to have changed it, or didn't go down that direction, because it easily could have kind of gone a lot farther into that sort of direction. But kind of it stuck to the whole overpowered main character. It kind of stuck to this shadow fight, basically between of course, the shadows versus the cult. And basically kind of develops there. They also kind of developed the whole, developed the school life, which was, I think that was a really good choice, basically, for it. I think, there's a lot of reasons why animes usually go and are based around schools of some sorts, where even you have Naruto, which is less so, but it still has, of course, the ninja school, and then there's literally all the rom-coms which kind of follow this cycle. Mob Psycho, 100 kind of follows the same thing. There's a natural rhythm to it, so it's not too surprising that they would try and get the author would move towards the school life sort of deal. And I'll probably go in later and towards in a different video, kind of what basically what the school life gives you, and the reason why literally everyone generally kind of does it. Oh, of course, Harry Potter is a huge one that does it very, very well. Kind of from here. So, but what I wanted to go into detail today is basically going on through the kind of just exploring the romance aspect of it. So basically what I want to do is how to scratch that, because I don't think there's necessarily the way, but there's a way to get the audience invested in romance happening. So one of the way, and basically the way we're going to be exploring this, is basically see how it is done in the Eminence. I said of Shadow, but I think it's in Shadow. Then again, it may not matter. Eminence in Shadow. Kind of see how basically they do it and what they do well, and kind of, just breaking down the details for that. So, generally the way this works is I would probably describe this anime, I would still describe it as a harem one. Now, it doesn't follow the typical plot or tropes of the harem per se. It kind of has all the different types of eligibly romantic characters. And the main difference, excuse me, the main difference I would say between it is more or less in most harems there's usually one guy, and what is it? There's the, let's see, there is the childhood friend. This is how generally they go. How childhood friend, the tomboy, the shy one, Shoot, what is it? Sundar. And then the, probably the cheerleader type. And usually this is kind of how at least for the females, I feel like it may follow the same route for the males. I'm not exactly sure. It wouldn't surprise me if it kind of follows the same sorts of tropes, because these are basically just hitting kind of the different, I don't know, just the different tropes, basically, the stereotypes, more or less. This is kind of how they usually follow, and usually what they do is then there's one guy, and for, usually in most harems, at least the ones like I was kind of stating above, usually it's bad reasons, but they all like him for one reason. Generally the way it works is he does one nice thing, and basically no one has ever been nice to any of these individuals, so they just fall in love with him. And there you go. And more or less, it's kind of the one guy, and you kind of have this continuing audience, more or less, of all the other characters. In this case, if we're going off of Eminence and Shadow and following it, it'd be kind of one guy to several girls, basically. And there's this kind of an audience, really, because it's usually fairly rare. It's just one v1. Usually it's kind of one, and then there's usually all the others in the background. Basically, this is how it is. So it's like the main character, main guy, whatever girl for the episode, and the other four are there. What Eminence and Eminence, I keep thinking it's of, I don't know why, but Eminence in Shadow, we'll put I in Shadow. There we go. Make it official. But basically what this does is it really does well. I really like this, where it kind of rotates the girls in and out. I almost think of it like a revolver, basically. So we've got different ones here. And then basically down here we have, of course, Sid, and this is the actual plot happening. And basically it kind of goes through here. You meet one girl, and it kind of phases them in or out depending on the situation. Now, granted, Sherry, I think I'm at like episode, which one am I at? I just finished 14, so I'm kind of farther along in the series. I think they're coming out. Yeah, they're still coming out on a weekly basis, so I'm not caught up yet with it. But episode 14, so far, and by the way, spoilers alert, so just at least be caught up to here. Sherry is the only one who's kind of left and moved on. But essentially what we've done is move through. We initially started with Alexia, or as they say in the sub, Alexia, and all their all their voices, high-pitched voices. So basically we're introduced to her. We start off with her, and then basically kind of moves beyond her. So basically then she falls for him, he breaks it off with her more or less, and then it moves on to the next girl. I think at that point we move on to Sherry, and then we go through Sherry's arc, and then she actually just completely leaves the story for now. Probably coming back, but for right now she leaves, and then we move on to Rose, and then presumably, I'm assuming they were all like lovey-dovey, or at least she was lovey-dovey, and I'm assuming that it's just going to kind of move on from there, and then it's probably going to go on to someone else. Well, actually, it kind of went on to the witch lady. I don't actually remember her name, but we're going to go with witch lady. And then from here, we've got a few options. It could go to Iris, or literally anyone else. They could just introduce someone else. It doesn't really matter from here at this point. It could also go to one of the shadows or something like that. So one of the main shadows. It could go to one of them. But basically, this is kind of the way the romance moves forward. And so what I like about this is it gives you individual time for each one-on-one for each relationship to kind of see how it would develop and go from there. It also kind of gives you this idea that there's not necessarily a main romance basically going on. This is one thing, granted I haven't watched a lot of them, but the one thing that really annoyed me is with a lot of harems is basically they would have more or less the one girl, And she would be one of these types, basically. We'll pick this one. This is the main girl. And you kind of know this is the main girl. So basically what you're doing is you're waiting for them to get together. But then all the others would continue to show up and go through it. And basically it would be almost this like continual showcase of all the other potentials that you could have, but you knew that he was never going to end up with one of these other romantic partners. And so it was just like, why are you here? Why are you even here? Like, I think you really need to figure this out. And usually, unfortunately, they weren't developed too well, so they didn't really exist outside of the romance or outside the scope of the romance. And they just kind of lived in the limelight, basically, from here. And it didn't really work well with the story. It just never seemed to work very well. Which, granted, I think what it was is basically it was kind of just fulfilling some sort of romantic fantasy for it. Which, again, there's nothing wrong. I mean, we all enjoy our what was it? Your Pop, or what's it? Jim Gaffigan had that. That's your McDonald's. That's your McDonald's, basically. That thing that you really like that you may be a little bit ashamed of or ashamed to admit it. But basically that's it. And we've all got those. So it's no big deal. It's just not for me. And I don't think it's very plot-wise well done. Because what we want to do is if that's your thing and you want to do it, then you need to do it and do it well. You're going to be the best one ever. And that's what it is. So there's your orders, coach, from the coach. So what we go on. So basically there's not a main romance going on. So what we do is theoretically, we don't imagine that any of these are going to work out. But there's this idea that, okay, so there's not one main girl. Basically, if anyone, it could have been Alexia, and it may return to be her. I really doubt it. Kind of hope not. But it could. It could be her. But basically, she's kind of out of the picture, basically, because there was a chance for the romance with her, but more or less that has now moved on. And kind of on to the next one, basically. So I don't think that's going to happen. And so then it gives you also dedicated time to focus on each individual girl, basically. Again, as if we were talking about what is it, Oran High School, I think, Host Club. Let's see, it would be about the guys, basically. It's been a while since I've seen that one, though, so I really can't go into detail. I don't remember much of anything, except for the guy with glasses was pretty cool. I kind of liked him. And the dad was the best character. But either way, so basically this is one thing that it does really well. And then the other thing that it does, which I really, it is very effective. It's very effective in terms of story writing. I think there's ways you can do it wrong and overdo it and everything, but it does manage to do it pretty well. So what it is basically a lot of the romances and the character introductions follow this route. Let me get my paper in place here. Let's go right here. Okay, so what we've got basically here is we have Sid going about daily life. Now, the nice thing about him is we're kind of following and watching to see what he does, because he is a overpowered character. And basically what I mean by that is, one, it's kind of like Mob from Mob Psycho 100. It's kind of Alucard from is it Alucard? I can't remember. I can't actually think of the anime he's from. Alucard, One Punch Man, overpowered main character. Trying to think of any others. Ones that I heard recently, which may be the case, but it was Battle Angel Alita from the movie. She was kind of overpowered, but not quite. But it kind of gets you this idea that they basically have everything they need in order to win. But basically what this means is we're usually, as an audience member, if you're thinking of the audience back here watching the character, we're basically waiting to see what we'll do. Usually what this means is that the main character knows what to do. More or less, because if usually with weaker characters or dumber characters or not as smart characters or characters where it's just a lot harder, you're kind of waiting to see. Usually you can kind of have an idea when they're doing something. Does something wrong, more or less. It's kind of basically the example that usually comes to mind is Harry Potter, of course, in book, book 5? Yeah, book 5 with Umbridge. basically when you were telling him, shut up, Harry, and sit down. There we go. When he would go out against Umbridge and he would, surprise, surprise, get punished by that weird abusive lady and nothing would happen because Hogwarts is a really bizarre school that probably couldn't exist in real life, but it's a good story, so we'll go along with it. Basically, it's one of these where it's like the answer is obvious for what you should actually be doing, more or less, because we obviously know that the thing that Harry should do above all is basically shut up and just keep his head down, do exactly what Dumbledore says, do exactly what Hermione says, but of course he doesn't. Usually with the stronger characters, these are your kind of again, kind of like Jason Bourne type characters, where these are the guys who know what to do. Basically, you throw them in a situation and you're waiting to see what they do because you don't know what to do, but they do. So basically, what we're doing is we're kind of watching to see him go through. What usually happens then is we intro the romantic interest, basically, from here. Now, the nice thing about this comic, which probably leads a lot of the good part, is we're kind of waiting and following the tempo of the main character. Again, he's a powerful character. He's also the main character, so he just kind of sets the tempo. He kind of sets what we're expecting him to do. So basically, he has no interest in romance, in a lot of things, but no interest in romance. So this makes it really, really pretty fun to watch. But it also means that there is no tension, which is good or bad, depending on what you're going for. There is no tension. Basically, what this also means is there's no stress, and there's no reason to worry, because all we're doing is waiting to see what he'll do. There's no reason to be like, oh, will he end up there? We don't care whether he ends up with them. And why don't we care? Care in a sense that we really, 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 really hope. Usually you really want, at the end of your rom-com, for the audience to want and really hope that the characters end up together. If they don't, you've probably done something wrong. But in this one, we're not too worried about it, mainly because the type is to worry, but we just don't really care. He's the main character's not worried about it either, which is kind of the main thing that we're following. But it means that there's just no stress, basically. There's no tension. We don't have to worry anything about that. But basically, so, kind of step one over here. Keep getting distracted. Usually then what you do is you introduce the romantic interest as a higher status. And this is a very loose term, and I'll go into details in explaining kind of what I mean by there. Higher status, and this could be in any way, basically, anyway. Usually it's a multiple way. Let's see, whoops, and over here. Anyway, usually what it is in terms, of course, the obvious is wealth, power, of course, the obvious, status, let's see, strength, influence. I'm using all these are pretty vague and kind of generic, but we'll go into a little bit more details. Basically what we're doing is we're creating, essentially usually what you try and add to it is highlight a vacuum. Oh, also, we add the main one as well, beauty. Or we'll just call it attractiveness. There we go. Attractiveness. Fit this in there. Basically, this is a reason why this could be you, the main character, you, the audience, either one. Basically, either of these yous. Because remember, we're looking at his perspective from our perspective, which means we are him. That's kind of usually how the point of view more or less works, is we're trying to trick you into thinking it's your point of view plus the audience point of view. So you're just looking from your point of view, which works out because you want to have your characters invested in there. But basically a higher status. So this is the reason why you should date these people. And this is where you can kind of see this play out in real life, because you'll see some like celebrities or something like that, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're so attractive. If only I could date them. And then really, if you look at them, most of them are quite very attractive. They're usually very well put together. They usually have some poise and skill, social standing, very funny, yada, 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 yada. But there are plenty of people you could meet in your real life that could be it. But usually what it is they're on. You're usually seeing them in limited moments. You're not seeing their bad side. You're only seeing a perfectly tailored image, basically. But what you're seeing is what you see is what you think is reality. Is you're seeing a lot of this stuff. You're seeing, oh my gosh, they are so amazing. Let's see. Date them. You're seeing all these play in it because, in a sense, you kind of want these things. You want your spouse, you want the person you're dating, you want somebody who's valuable, basically, in a sense. Like, I think that's the boil it down. Basically, it's a valuable thing. It also means you'll have that. It's kind of like marrying a mechanic. You know, it's really nice to marry a mechanic because then they can mechanic your car. You know, she or he could fix your carburetor, for example, or transmission. You know, those things go for a lot these days. Basically, so it basically what this is usually how people think of it in terms of this. Relationships are often very, very transactional. You know, people are constantly looking at this business deal, basically, and they're kind of looking at this aspect of it. So, and basically then this is it. So usually though, this is highlighted by the MC not having these things, basically. So equals none of that. Now in this instance, this is the reason why there is no tension is because we have an overpowered main character. Usually this is the reason, it kind of plays into it, the reason why a lot of these main characters are just your average guy, basically. And most average people feel, most average people feel like they don't have this stuff, basically. They do not feel this way. They don't walk out the door and think, wow, I am of great status, I am super strong, super intelligent, got influence, I'm beautiful, yada, yada, yada. Usually they're not. They just feel like normal people and they wake up and feel like crap, you know. Spoiler alert. But basically, this is kind of the reasons why you should date them. Because you don't have this, you should want this. And usually this is how it kind of works out from here. And usually this can be highlighted in some sort of skill. So basically then, this is the intro to the romantic interest. Basically, we're introduced to, you know, you can see this with Alexia. You can see this with Sherry. Intro to the romantic interest. Let's see, Rose. And which lady? We'll categorize this as the 4. I think I may be missing one, but I can't remember all of them. But basically, you know, like she's a princess. She's powerful. She's got status, power, strength. She's a great sword fighter. She's got influence, intelligence, beauty, attack, all this stuff. Basically, bam, across the board. Sherry, she's kind of got all this stuff more or less. She's very, very intelligent. She's extra points on the intelligence thing. So basically, she's the only one in the kingdom. It's kind of highlighted. Like a lot of people can be swordsmen or swordswomen, like Alexia. But Sherry's the only one who can kind of be quite as smart for it. Rose, again, is kind of the princess, follows all these. This is the reason why princes and princes are quite attractive, because they got all these. They usually got all these. Usually with anime and all movies and stuff and Hallmark and everything, they usually play up all these traits, more or less. Even though probably in real life it was less so, because often they did a lot of inbreeding. So usually some of the stuff didn't quite make it down the chain. Basically then, Witch Lady, usually she got all this, and Magic Power, well, that's some extra in there. Basically, Magic Power. And basically what it is these kind of all come into play. So this is how each of these. Now, this is kind of it. Now, number 3, we're going through. Let me see. I think that's actually the main thing. So basically now what we've got is we've introduced our romantic interest. We've kind of shown why anyone would want to be. Usually kind of the next thing is to kind of specify why, let's see, the MC should be with them, more or less. Oops. Why it should be with them. Usually this will happen after they have some sort of one-on-one adventure. So this lets the audience get used. These kind of look like 2s, so let me turn these into 1s. One-on-one adventure. Usually this is where we get to see kind of the chemistry come into play. You usually get to see the girl/guy show off, basically. So this is where, Sherry gets to show off the fact that she knows how to tinker with these ancient artifacts. Alexia, she's a very powerful swords lady. She's also very kind. She was helping, the weird, creepy demon girl and the thing next door. Rose, swordswoman, she basically, she beats Sid, even though he makes it happen. Beats Sid basically with this witch lady. She's a very strong, summoned from the sanctuary. She's a very strong lady. Kind of all these come into play. Or we get to show the chemistry, show what it would be like. Basically, this is a showcase for what it would be like if they were together. I'm just going to, yep, together. That says together. All right, so basically this is kind of a showcase for what it is. And again, this kind of plays into effect with the revolver aspect of one girl at a time. We're focusing on one girl at a time. And this is the reason why this makes it so that way when they go on their adventure, there's not this basically audience of women, more or less, kind of staring daggers down at it. Now, a little bit of this can come into play. You can kind of see this when Sherry talks with Alexia on liking or dating Sid. So that could come into play, and a little bit of that is fine, but it's not one of those where you're just waiting for the current adventure to end because the main girl is going to actually be the one to date them in the end, and there's no point in beating around the bush, so this should just hurry up and move on. Again, I feel like harems are not necessarily for me, but I think this is the idea of this is why they are popular. Kind of one aspect, because we're living vicariously through our main character, who then gets to basically experience or be with someone of this. So, I'm never going to date a celebrity, but if I watch a show, you can kind of get what it would be like, and this is kind of what adds to this almost addicted nature of them, I feel like, in some sense of it. But basically, this is kind of gives you an idea of what it would be like, more or less. This is why we read stories, is kind of see what it would be like to be, I watched Northman a while back. What's it like to be a Viking warrior in, the 1300 or something like that, I got an idea now. Not great, by the way. It kind of seems to have sucked. They had no actual internet. Absolutely nothing. Not even dial-up. So, but basically this is usually how it is. And then what the show does really well, this is the one thing where the show does really well, is basically what it is the girl, usually in this place, it's usually the girl, is, underestimates. We'll say that. Underestimates Sid. Underestimates Sid, and then Sid gets a chance to basically show off, more or less. Show off / true power. We're calling it true power, basically. And what you do is basically this is the ultimate flex, more or less. Basically, like Alexia, and sometimes this is not necessarily to the girl. Sometimes it happens in subtle ways. So with Alexia, basically, we don't have it. It's not direct because, of course, she doesn't know that he's the one who saved her. But we do know that he's better than her because she, or at least that's the way it seems. Again, it's not the way it seems is what really matters here. She wants to date him, and he doesn't want to date her. X. He doesn't want to date her. So basically, there's this kind of power dynamic in the relationship. There's this power dynamic in the relationship where you can kind of get this idea of, and I'm sure if hypothetically, if anyone's ever been in a one-sided relationship, you can kind of tell that there's this other person who more or less has the upper hand and gets to kind of dictate which way the other everything goes. So basically there's this power, and usually also it's in combination with this idea that, Sid is actually much better. You think you got all this, but Sid is much better. And then the other thing he does, which is really interesting, which is kind of counterintuitive, but some of you who've followed any sort of the basic cheesy psych stuff, they'll tell you, the way to get somebody to like you is not necessarily to do something nice for them, it's to have them do something nice for you. And so what the idea is then is that Sid helps we'll call it romantic partner, basically out. And what happens with this is it causes the audience to like them. And it's kind of a weird thing. I haven't fully... I think I've got a pretty good grasp on why, but it's not 100% sure all that's in play with this. But I think what it is more or less is if you have somebody on your side, basically, and if you help them, they owe you, basically. That's kind of the idea. And you'll like somebody who owes you because they owe you, in a sense. So they're kind of your guy. You get to call them up kind of whenever you want. You get to kind of ask for their help. There's the kind of friendship, a camaraderie that can, not necessarily camaraderie, but friendship that can go with it, because there's someone that they owe you one, more or less. So basically you have this idea that they owe you one, and then the audience starts to like them. And we've just been through this one-on-one adventure where we showcase what it would be like to be together, and we start to like them a little bit more because he's helped them. At the same time, keeping in mind, at least for Eminence and Shadow, there's no tension, no stress, no worry, because remember, he has no interest in the romance, basically, whatsoever. So there's not really any tension or worry that it may or may not happen. We just get to kind of see how it happens, more or less. So we help them. This happens, and then the girl falls for him. The girl falls for him. And we see this with, Alexia, basically. She has it. Sherry has it. Rose has it. And which lady? And I'm not really including the shadows here because they don't technically follow him. Usually they're just more or less, they like him already. So it's kind of like, already. They're just kind of already there. Basically, these usually go from people who don't know him to falling for him in this. And we can kind of see their full, basically the full metamorphosis and change, or no, not that, character development. Yeah, that was the word I was looking for. The whole character development. And basically then the girls falls for him. So basically, what have we done? And to kind of summarize this and how we created this. So basically what we've got is, introduce the romantic interest. She has all of this stuff. The attractiveness, usually in anime, the attractiveness here is one that is usually extra emphasized in two ways. But that one is usually emphasized. And there's kind of this why the MC should be with him combo with the adventure. We get to see chemistry. Usually it's kind of an idea of what they can do together. More or less, kind of seemingly what it kind of goes, what it would like to be together. Kind of what does the other person offer, basically. If you team up with with a mechanic, basically, they can fix your car. If you team up with a musician, and team up, I'm using team up just in terms of, because it could be romantically, could be not, but usually this is kind of the preliminary to some sort of romantic aspect. It's just some sort of platonic team up. You're just teaming up with them, and then you'll see where it goes. We, the audience, are watching these people team up, and then we'll see where it goes. Let's see. Musician, they will play music. And basically this idea that you get their talents, in a sense. You get them in your life. You don't actually get them, but you get them in your life. More or less that. And then basically then we see this power difference, more or less, where we get to see the Sid basically do a flex, kind of prove that he is better, in a sense, or the stronger in some aspect of the character. But you still get to see what it would be like kind of if they were together. And then she wants to date him. So then now the power, again, this power dynamic is in his side, basically in his favor, more or less. Let's see. In his favor, I was trying to draw, what was it, a seesaw, more or less. There we go. We'll put the girls over here. I think this is how this metaphor is supposed to work. I'm not sure who's winning, who's on the ground versus that, but we're just going to say he's winning. So there we go. There we go. And the girl falls for him. But again, this happens in conjunction with the idea that the audience likes them. The audience likes them. So now that the audience likes them, again, by this weird, again, I'm not exactly sure the whole psychology behind it, and I think, but you can kind of understand. Now, this is not to say that having the girl do something nice for them is not a way to make it happen. You can definitely make it work. It just, in this instance, that's not what's happening. That's not the way it's going. So more or less, it's just going, it's using this, and this is a way to make it work. That's kind of the nice thing about story writing, is you can do just about anything so long as it works. So long as it works, and then as long as it does that, nobody cares. Really, nobody cares. There we go. So long as it works. Yeah, so that kind of covers it. This is kind of the, we'll call it the 4 points, 5 points. We're going to call it the 4 points. This is point 4. And then, of course, down here is point 5. Yeah, point 5. So there's the 5 points for romance. And I kind of wanted to highlight this in terms of if you are wanting to introduce a character, because this is what I was kind of looking forward to, is if I was wanting to introduce a character, how would I do it, basically? So, oops, move my light. I'm going to go ahead and move my paper. Yeah, move it over here. And let's go through it, and I can kind of show you guys what I was doing. So basically, I was going to, here we go. Let's see. I was going to intro the girl, and in this case, it's a girl and a guy being the main character. And so we're going to intro the girl, basically. The MC plus his buddy rescue her. And she leaves. And she does so kind of cocky and coy, more or less. And basically, you get the idea. This is the whole interaction is to indicate that she is important, more or less. Because the idea is, well, why would the bad guys be after her if she wasn't important? What is she doing that they would be after her? She's important. She's someone important. So again, it kind of goes with this status, basically, thing. You know, the bandits are after the girl. They're not after these two guys. So these people are nobody, basically. They're nobody. So she's important. Kind of moves on to the next stage. She's going to probably contact somehow. So basically give them some reason or some way to spend time together. And basically then I'm going to kind of introduce. And so again, we've established higher status. And contact somehow, basically. And kind of reason to be together. A reason to be around each other, we'll say. That's probably more accurate. Reason to be around each other, and then as it kind of builds, they're going to go on this one adventure. And this doesn't have to be one adventure. It could be multiple. It kind of depends on how you want it. Usually in this story, it's kind of one-on-one and some sort of one-time adventure, just because you're moving on to the next plot point, the next romantic partner, or the next girl, yada, yada, and kind of on from there. But some romantic adventure. And then basically what I'm going to do is have some villain basically be her boss. Basically, it's just she was working with this boss. And what's going to happen is more or less the main character plus the girl are going to team up and kill the boss. Kill her boss, basically. Kill the villain. So this will free her so they can be together. And you can kind of see this kind of follows a number of other trends. This is by no means original. Again, we're not aiming necessarily for originality. We're aiming to figure out what works and to make it our own. And in that way you could say it's original. But the idea is that this is the framework we're going to use. So what does this also do? I can use this fight also to show that she is really powerful. Really powerful. You know, she was working for a villain after all. She's not just any nobody. So she's very powerful. She smart. All these things. And then basically once you kill the villain and it's just the MC plus the girl, you, the main character, you get to show off that you're more powerful And you get to, let's see, yeah, here we go. You've helped out the romantic partner, and the audience caused them to like him, and then the girl falls for him. Basically, this is the kind of pattern we're going with, and this means ta-da. So, I think that covers all the basics for everything. I hope you guys enjoyed that and learned something. I'm going to keep watching this anime. It's actually pretty enjoyable. I honestly went in it with very low expectations, so, there we go. Let's see. What is the phrase I heard, which I like? So, high hopes and low expectations. Anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one.